Good morning, folks. It is showtime. It's the morning after the draft. I've named this PFIAM. It's PFIPM where Jeff Reinbold is. Just very quickly before we bring him in, our Lincoln's College Football Classic, the 2024 game is FSU Georgia Tech. You can get limited tickets now, linktr.ee/NFL Ireland. And they announced, Jeff, Farmageddon, we were talking about it. Kansas State against Iowa State in 2025. collegefootballireland.com. Thank you for their support. And Jeff, it's the morning after the draft. It's the first time we've done this. And you know what, man? Zero regrets. I feel like a spring chicken. And I'm loving the selections. How have you found the draft? And firstly, how are you? And thank you for coming on.
Michael, it's always a pleasure to be on with you and to talk football and to talk the draft, because the draft is, without a doubt, the most. I mean, did you see the crowd in Detroit?
It made Nashville look like a crash, Jeff.
It was amazing, and it's just a credit to the National Football League, to the game, and to everybody that's involved in promotion of the game. 32 teams had a chance to take a crack at getting better today, and I think some of them did, and some of them I'm not so sure.
I think the best way to do this, we've got about 45 minutes. I think the best thing to do is for people's commute in the UK, Ireland, whatever, going, there's Jeff on the radio. Let's just go through each pick. I mean, obviously the first one, Caleb Williams. I may have FaceTimed you last night and I said to you, is Caleb Williams a bust? The Bears certainly don't think so, and we've been waiting. We've been waiting to see who we're going to pick number one. We knew they were going to pick him. Have you changed your mind in the last 10 or 12 hours at all on him?
No, I haven't changed my mind at all on him, Michael. I think he's obviously a very, very talented player. He's got the size, he's got the athletic ability, to escape and to do things outside the pocket. He's a much more polished and finished thrower than Justin Fields was when they took him with the first pick. Again, how he handles the pressure of being the first player picked and, the quote savior of the Bears. Remember now, I'm just going to take you back a few years ago. Justin Fields at Ohio State goes number one to the Bears. That afternoon, in less than a day, he was already the most popular athlete, professional athlete in Chicago. And Chicago has the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Bears, the White Sox, the Cubs. They have all kinds of pro teams. And in one afternoon, he was anointed the most popular pro athlete in the city of Chicago. Here we are, less than a rookie contract away from that date, and he's in Pittsburgh because he couldn't get it done in Chicago.
Chicago, notoriously a sports analytical town, I would say, in the sense of you're basically in trouble before you even enter the facility. Did you see that new stadium they've rendered the other day?
Absolutely beautiful. And they need it. Soldier Field is antiquated. It's 61,000. It's the smallest stadium in the National Football League. Obviously, the Bears deserve better. The Chicago fans deserve better. They're going to get better. Now the question is, can Caleb Williams be the guy that can, help him turn the Bears around? Because no single guy is going to do it. They brought in Keenan Allen. They've tried to address issues on their football team. They drafted Malik Nabers. They drafted Rome Odunze, which I think is brilliant, the receiver out of Washington, in the first round. Also, they only have two more picks in the draft, so they've got to do some real work here in the second day. But certainly, they started the draft off in fine fashion, taking Caleb Williams, an undisputed talent, with the first pick.
Shout out to everybody watching live this morning. Shout out to everyone in their cars going to work, and shout out to everyone in Jeff's land that are going to bed. Lyle Long, one of Jeff's friends, says, "Coach, what's up?" Mickey Brady's watching live as well. Shout out to everyone watching live. We really appreciate it. Jeff, one of the things that got me last night was we started to hear whispers of certain players could move up and certain players could fall. We didn't see Jayden Daniels fall. The LSU quarterback went second overall to the Commanders. Commanders have found a guy that really has that rare, in my opinion, rushing ability, but also that fantastic arm talent as well. We've seen how good he was with LSU over the last couple of years, but more so, Jeff, a Commanders team that is in a period of transition, a period of movement, and then they've admitted that themselves just with the ownership. They now have the ability to regroup and move forward to this offense with Jayden Daniels. I like that pick more than I like Caleb Williams. Am I mad?
No, I don't think you're mad, Michael. I think what you said, a lot of what you said is exactly correct. The Commanders franchise has done a great job since they've taken over. They're trying to change a culture in Washington. They're trying to change a culture in that building. They bring in Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is one of the most, popular coaches in the National Football League. He's an ultra positive guy. He sees the good in everything and everybody. I think that's a positive step. And then they go out and they had the most money of anybody, over $100 million to spend in free agency. Which is, I guess, the transfer window. If you're not familiar with how free agency works, $100 million to spend. They go out and they spend it. They bring in 4 legitimate starters from where Quinn was as an assistant coach to the Dallas Cowboys, in your rival, in your division rival. And then they continued to build. They brought in some older guys that are probably 2 or 3 year guys, but those are going to be the guys that they're going to hang their hat on to turn the culture inside that building. And Jayden Daniels will go a long way. He's very popular with his teammates. He's extremely athletic, as you mentioned. Michael got a great big arm. The player comparison that I've heard that makes the most sense to me is Michael Vick. He has that ability to run the ball. I think he's going to have to learn in the NFL to protect himself a little bit more than he did at LSU, because he's a guy that, if it's 3rd and 8 and he's got to put his head down and burrow to get 2 more yards at the end, he's going to do that. When you get to the National Football League and you're playing against those guys, you better be careful with all that, because they do not have a chance if they don't have Jayden Daniels. So I'm sure that they'll help him learn how to protect his body.
The People's Draft mock is already tits up here, Jeff. 2 picks in. The 3rd pick with the New England Patriots is probably the most intriguing one, because it's the first one in the generation that Bill Belichick isn't really a part of. Did you get a chance to see Belichick on McAfee at all last night?
I didn't watch McAfee. I was tuned to another channel.
Oh, okay. Contractual obligations there. I'll send them more. Again, before sort of the give and take last night, there was talk again, and it was NFL Network talk. It was all like the insider talk. Hashtag move the sticks about the Patriots potentially shopping the 3rd pick, potentially trying to, if they got an offer they couldn't refuse, they would maybe go down. But then there was the estimation in Boston that they would just stick, and they stick with Drake Maye. Certainly not the finished talent, Jeff, but if they can craft him, if they can get him to make him work in that Patriot system, it's an intriguing pick for me. And one thing that I need to mention, and I'm not bigging you up here because you told me in FaceTime about 40 minutes ago, you had these guys going in the order they went in. Do you like the Maye pick to New England? Do you think it's the right time for them?
I'm gonna big up myself, Mike. I had every quarterback going exactly the way they went. Not to the team.
So far.
In the order that they went. Not to the
You did, no, you did.
Okay, so now here's what I'm going to say about this. Drake Maye is probably the most prototypical NFL quarterback of any of these guys. He's big. He's 6'5". His father played quarterback at North Carolina. He's got a big arm. He's got much better than average athletic ability, can escape, get outside the pocket, tough, all of it, intelligent, got a little bit of charisma about him. If you would have taken his 22 film and looked at it, you'd say that might be the first player picked, or it would have been Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, and Jayden Daniels would have been somewhere down the line. Well, Jayden Daniels has a Heisman Trophy winning season at LSU. Drake Maye struggled some at North Carolina. Offensive line problems, new group of receivers. They just didn't play as well as they're capable of. So he fell a little bit. But then when the scouts and the people got a chance to get their hands on him, the coaches got a chance to bring him in, they saw him throw live. Everybody started to say, wait a second now, we got to reconsider. This kid's better than, where I saw him ranked as low as 6th. But I think cooler heads prevailed. New England did shop him, know that they did. But they didn't get back what they wanted, because New England's got multiple problems, and they are always been a team that would trade down. Wolf, the general manager, said earlier in the week, we're open for business, and we'll be open for business all day on Thursday. So obviously they were willing to listen, but apparently nothing came. They like Drake Maye. They think Drake Maye's the future. Now, again, the challenge for Coach Mayo and the Patriots and that whole organization, They need to get some players around him. They've got to find some talent around him.
Which is why Friday, Saturday, and even after that is going to be key for them as well to try and get some more guys into the office before it all kicks off. Are you concerned with, you bring in Drake Maye, there is that reset now that Belichick's gone. Do you feel that an organization as structured as the New England Patriots will give him the time? We see Mac Jones get time, so you would expect Drake Maye to be given the benefit of the doubt and allow the team to be built around him in that sense.
Well, I think it's a whole new, the Belichick is going to cast a long shadow in New England for a long time. But the reality of it is, inside that building, it's a reset. It's a total reset. Now, Jerome Mayo was a Belichick player. He's a Patriot, right? So he understands the culture of the Patriots. He knows the owner. There's a lot of reasons to do what they did. But he's also his own man. You see that in the way he's hired coaches. He's brought in his guys, and he's going to do it his way. And I think this is the first step. Now, you made a great point, Mike, and this is really what the first round is, the runway round of the draft, right? It's the sexy round of the draft. It's the lingerie show of the draft, all right?
The Jeff Reinbold run.
But it's the 2nd through the 7th that you make your draft, right? You need to score in between the 2nd and the 7th because that's where you're going to build your football team. Now, what can they do in the 2nd to the 7th and in trades and remaining free agency and all the other ways that you're going to improve your team? Because this kid's going to need help. And right now, the offensive line's not good enough. The receivers are not nearly good enough, right? They've got a couple backs. They've got a tight end, but they need help. Drake Maye needs help if he's going to succeed early on in his career in New England.
So again, I said the people's draft is ready, sets up. I think the Patriots, the guys at the franchise tag, took Marvin Harrison Jr. I think we always knew that he was going to fall to 4. And it's funny, I keep saying it now, but you had that whole discourse before with the Cardinals trade. I think they're not going to trade down. You can't pass on a guy like this. Kyler Murray coming back in. And Jeff, the expectation for Marvin Harrison Jr. is absurd. I said to Neil in Belfast, it's like, Neil, do you feel old seeing Marvin Harrison's son play the NFL? How do you feel? Like, because for me, Jeff, it's like, it's the end for me as a fan of that first generation, where then you got obviously Frank Gore's sons in here as well, and different guys. I think Joe Alt's as well. We'll talk about Alt in a minute, actually. And I love the pick. I think if you're going to give Murray that confidence and let him regroup, and give Marvin Harrison, Jeff as well, an opportunity to really develop himself under as little pressure as possible, not that even exists in the NFL in the first couple of years. Going into the NFC West, going into Arizona, I like it, but the minimum expectation here is at least 4 or 5 All-Pro seasons, yeah? Minimum.
Let me just say, Michael, I'm way past feeling like, the generations are moving on, because I can remember when I went to St. Louis with Coach Vermeil, and Jackie Slater was the left tackle. And Matt Slater played 16 years in the NFL and just retired. So
we're in the book then.
Pretty soon we'll be into the 3rd generation of Slaters before it goes. So I don't think about it that way. Marvin Harrison is Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, he is the son of the great Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison. But Mike, this kid is everything you want. He's big, he's strong, he can get in and out of his breaks, he can stick his foot in the ground and come downhill, he can run past you, he's big enough to run, you can't press him, he's very difficult to press, he's so strong. He has very soft hands, great hand-eye coordination, everything that you look for. And he got coached by Brian Hartline, who's maybe the best receiver coach in college football today. So, there's nothing about him that says he's going to do anything but succeed at the highest level. Now, obviously, this is pro football, right? And, injuries and all those things can happen. But, you don't draft worrying about injuries. You draft saying this guy's going to be a gold jacket guy, just like his dad.
Props to him. And look, I don't envy him going into that pressure. And I know his dad would have taught him a thing or two in the garden many years ago. That's incredible about that whole 16-year thing. Number 5, and Jeff, I love, this was probably the discourse that I enjoyed the most over the last few days. It's head or heart with Coach Harbour in LA. Obviously, he worked with JJ McCarthy. He worked with a running back as well in Michigan. And I thought, I wonder who's he going to pick. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen Antonio Brown's CTESPN account over the last few days, which, now, in defense of Antonio Brown, I never thought I'd say that, he leaked the Broncos uniforms a week before everybody else, so he knows something. He was trying to say that they were going to trade, or sorry, that they were going to get JJ McCarthy, and everyone was going, "Why the hell would they want JJ McCarthy? All this and Herbert to the Vikings didn't happen." A guy that I had the chance to see up close at the college game of the Aer Lingus College Football Classic in Dublin was Joe Alt. Obviously, his dad played in the NFL as well. I think with the Chiefs. Jeff was a fantastic player. Coach Harbour is really bringing in a guy that's going to beef that up, an offensive bully on that line, and if anyone needs protection to try and not get injured, it's Justin Herbert. Yeah, has to be. Like, I love the move.
Yeah, and they've worked to make the protection better for Justin Herbert, right? They took the kid out of Northwestern, and that's turned into a real good player. Got hurt, but he should be back. Alt solidifies the offensive line. He can be a 10-year starter at left tackle, which is the toughest position to man in the offensive line. He's 6'9", Michael. 315 pounds. He can bend. He's a great athlete. He has all of the length that you look for. He has incredibly long arms, great balance. And the only thing that, when you look at Alt, the only thing that you could maybe grade him down on is he's not a real mauler when it comes to the run game. He's going to position block you and do some of that stuff. And it was interesting to hear what Harbaugh said today. He said, people ask, why don't we draft a weapon? And he said, in the way we play football, offensive linemen are the weapons. He said, as a matter of fact, they're the tip of the spear. So they're committing themselves. They brought Greg Roman in to be the offensive coordinator. And Greg Roman was his coordinator in San Francisco when they pounded the ball with Colin Kaepernick. And then he was the coordinator in Buffalo, and then the coordinator with the Ravens, and they have run the ball well every place he's been. Expect the Los Angeles Chargers are going to run the football. They're going to get some balance in their offense.
Part of me wanted them to go for Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, just to have that electric speed for that offense, because they've lost Austin Eckler as well, and it would have gave more to them. Now, I want to go back because I want to try and roll through some picks here. A few weeks ago on the Jeff Ryan Bull show, it's not that we had like a sort of mini argument or like a what's that called, like an intervention. We were both very down on the Giants. You were talking about the depth chart. They had nothing going there. They bring in Malik Nabers at 6, I believe, or 6, a wide receiver. It gives Daniel Jones some help. They're probably not a finished project yet, Jeff, but are you happy with the pick for the Giants there?
Well, I'm going to tell you something, Michael. If you go to the Giants facility, which is in New York, right? And I'm sorry, it's in New Jersey. And you look to the east, you can see the skyline of Manhattan, the lights of New York City, Michael, the streets of NYC, the Big Apple. The big problem here is, will Malik Nabers get eaten alive by the streets of New York? There was a lot.
It sounds like you're doing a metaphor there for that coffin for the streets of New York. Like, right?
No,
okay.
But there was a lot of talk before the draft about his maturity. Now, one of the reasons they work so hard to get on the backgrounds of these kids is all of a sudden this guy's going to be in a city that doesn't sleep, and there's a million distractions on every corner, and everybody's got a deal for you. Everybody wants to be your friend. And now, if you don't learn how to say no, or you can't say no, the streets will eat you alive. And New York has eaten up, got tons of guys. I mean, I can go through bunches of them, right, that went there and their careers never happened because they couldn't stay out of the nightclubs and they couldn't stay out of downtown and they couldn't. So that's my only concern about Malik Nabers, because Malik Nabers is dynamic. And I mean dynamic with a capital D. He's got great short burst quickness. You can throw him the ball in the flat and he can go 80 with it. You can throw it deep and he can beat you over the top. He'll go inside and get the ball. He's not the biggest guy, but I think in the slot, he would be dynamic for New York. The problem that with this is, again, The Giants have got to fix that offensive line, Mike. 85 sacks they gave up last year in the National Football League. 85.
That's insane.
I mean, Mike, everybody's down on Daniel Jones, right? I'm going to tell you something. Watch the tape. And that guy should get the Medal of Honor for playing behind that offensive line.
I can just picture President Biden now.
Honestly, God, the problem with it is, Mike, if they have another year like that, they'll have to award it to him posthumously because he's going to get killed behind that punch.
He's one injury away, as far as I'm concerned, from being done, and I hope that doesn't. You wouldn't wish that on anyone, but you want to see somebody progress, and he's been given more opportunities now than any other team, really, in the sense of you've seen different teams get rid of quarterbacks like sweets. That's the reality of it. I want to jump because we've got about 25 minutes or so. I want to jump on a couple of picks, so we'll go with 7 and 8 in one pop. Jesse Latham, Alabama offensive tackle. I like the protection that he's going to give Will Levis going into his second year. Obviously, the Titans a little bit in transition. They're not going to have Derrick Henry there anymore. They're going to be relying more on the pass. I like what's going to happen there. But Jeff, we're 8 picks in here, and we have not seen a national champion get picked yet from Michigan. But we've seen Atlanta, who bring in Kirk Cousins, go for Michael Penix Jr., a guy that obviously played with Washington in the college football playoff. Really interesting speed, agility out of the pocket. I love the project. I love the fact they're going to bring him in. They're going to get the most, and they hope to get the best out of Kirk Cousins. But you would presume now that Kirk Cousins is a 2-3 year project before they bring in Michael Penix. And just to say, thanks to everybody watching live. Big shout out to Gary for liking the stream on Facebook. People are loving this, Jeff. We should do this every Monday morning during the season with your incredibly ridiculous time difference. Jesse Latham, Michael Penix, what's the thoughts?
I think let's go with Jesse Latham first. I had Jesse Latham as my 5th highest rated tackle in the draft, and he went second to Alt. Now, he's a big, strong, physical guy. And he's, again, comes out of a great program at Alabama. I think what that does for the Titans, Skronsky, who they drafted last year real high, is really a more natural guard than he is a tackle. Now you can move him back into guard. He played tackle for the Titans this past year. You can move him back to guard and put this kid out at tackle. And I think you've got a dominant side of the offensive line, probably the left side. I think the Penix thing is fascinating for a couple of reasons, Michael. It's obviously a long-term solution, right? They're going to try and get a couple years out of Kirk Cousins, win, and then turn it over while Michael's still on his rookie contract. Here's the 2 things about that are concerning. Michael Penix has a very, very documented injury history. He's had 2 ACL tears on his right knee, right? I think he's had 4 season-ending injuries in his career. Okay, that's the first thing, the injury factor. Then the other factor is if you want a long-term commitment or a long-term program, you want a young player. Michael Penix is 26 years old. So let's say Kirk Cousins plays for 3 seasons. Michael Penix becomes a starter at just under 30. Okay, so those are the 2 things about it that I questioned a little bit. I do not question the pick, because I had Michael Penix picked as my 4th best quarterback in the draft.
Do you think he, just generally, because I know you work with players all the time, do you think he would be happy with that, sitting behind Kirk Cousins for 2 years? Do you think he'd be happy with the pick?
No, I don't think so. And I think it was interesting today, Kirk Cousins' reaction. It's really interesting what happens when something like a quarterback's picked. Now, Kirk Cousins shouldn't have to worry about any of these guys. He's proven it. He's been there, done that, right? But he was a little miffed today that they didn't call him and tell him that they were drafting a quarterback. You remember Aaron Rodgers' reaction a few years ago, and then go back a few years before that and remember Brett Favre's reaction when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. These guys are a little bit touchy about a different quarterback in the house. I think Michael Penix is a very, very good player. Now, when is the last time that I think I can think of 2 maybe. When you think about left-handers that were great throwers, okay? Steve Young developed into a great thrower, and Boomer Esiason had a lot of success as a left-hander. Michael Vick had a great arm, but he wasn't a great passer. So again, people don't realize that when a left-hander throws the ball, it rotates differently than when a right-hander does. And if you've been a receiver and you've constantly caught the ball from right-handed quarterbacks, and all of a sudden it spins different when it's coming at you, it takes a little bit to get used to. But Michael Penix, make no doubt about it, can make all the throws. He's very intelligent. He may be the best football intelligence of any of these quarterbacks in the draft.
We are live here on Friday morning, post round 1 of the draft. Jeff has got his coffee in. I've got the coffee hooked to the back of my neck here and just injected it there. We're gonna let's go 9 and 10. We got about 20-25 minutes on the stream. Roma Duns, you pronounce his surname differently, man. Just on FaceTime earlier on. Going to the Bears. Bears obviously have 2 picks inside the top 10, and the first big trade of the night, Jeff. The Vikings move up a staggering 1 pick to get JJ McCarthy. They get their man. They get the national champion quarterback, who was ranked where on your big board? Talk me through these 2 picks. Now, think about it in this sense. Keenan Allen, Roma Duns working together now in Chicago. I love it. I love it.
I had it, Dunze, as my second rated receiver on the board. I gave him props over Nabers because he's character. Again, he's a cleaner prospect to me, right? Can still do everything that Nabers can do. Maybe not as quite as good after the catch as Nabers is, but he's a legit going to be a superstar, I think, in the league. He's got all of the stuff that you look for. Great pick by the Bears. Immediately upgrades that receiver room. He can learn how to be a pro receiver under Keenan Allen's direction. And, I think that is a big step. Ryan Poles came into this draft, the general manager of the Bears, and I think he was under pressure. They have to hit this draft, or it's going to be probably his last draft in Chicago. And those first 2 picks in the first round, I think, really say good things to Bears fans everywhere.
It's a new dawn in Minnesota. Obviously, it's the 3rd season now. Kevin O'Connell, the 2nd season of a new GM. They move on from Kirk Cousins. They bring in JJ. Are you up or down on JJ?
I think it's good for both sides. I think for JJ, it gives him a little of what he had at Michigan. At Michigan, he had weapons around him. He's going to have weapons around him in Minnesota. He had a good offensive line at Michigan. I think the Minnesota Viking offensive line is better than probably half the league. Okay, so he's got a quarterback coach and a head coach who's very quarterback friendly with his system. So to me, this is where I thought McCarthy should go. Sometimes that doesn't work out that way, but JJ McCarthy will have his best chance for success playing in Minnesota for Kevin O'Connell.
I think what we'll do, we'll go to 15 on the analysis, and then we'll start breaking down different players, I think, in that sense. The Jets bring up an offensive tackle. I mean, why? Obviously, the Vikings move up 1. They were panicking on JJ McCarthy. Do you believe that they maybe got word that they were going to go for McCarthy with the whole situation? Obviously, Zach Wilson goes to the Broncos a couple of days ago, which I was absolutely delighted to see. Just fantastic. Fashanu, the offensive tackle, for the Jets at 11. The Broncos go with Bo Nix, and it's came out, Jeff, before we start talking about that Cleveland Browns-esque list of players on the back of a jersey in terms of quarterbacks in the last 10 years. Apparently, they brought in Bo Nix. They gave him plays or a workbook at 11 o'clock the night before. They bring him in the next day, and he impressed. I suppose fans have got to trust Sean Payton here now, but you're looking at another guy where it's a 2 to 3 year project. Just your thoughts on those, but especially like that Bo Nix one. I'm not saying it split people in Denver, but I think a lot of people wanted Drake Maye, to be honest with you.
Well, I think a lot of people probably did want Drake Maye, and Sean Payton might have even wanted Drake Maye. However, Drake Maye was gone on the 3rd pick, so they had to make a decision: do we take a quarterback, or do we just go with what we got in the building and try and get better around him? I think this is an intriguing pick because one of the knocks on Nix is he's not real big, right? He doesn't have prototypical size. Well, Sean Payton coached a pretty good quarterback that didn't have, prototypical size. and Drew Brees and got a lot out of him. Bo Nix,
And he's very small in person, I have to say. He is so small, man. You wouldn't think he's a quarterback. Like.
Drew,
Drew Brees.
Drew,
I couldn't
Bo Nix.
believe it when I seen it. I was like, oh my, he's so small, man.
Well, I tell you, he is. I liked Bo Nix better when I was at Auburn. He threw the ball down the field more at Auburn. At Oregon, he was tough for me to evaluate, Mike, because the average length of his passes was under 10 yards, right? He threw a lot of bubble screens and stuff like that. So it was really hard to, see him drive the ball. But what you did see when he did do it is that he can do it. Now, what are the things that you're going to need to succeed with Sean Payton as your quarterback coach and signal caller? You number one, you better listen, right? Which this kid can do. You better be able to process information quickly, which obviously he can do based upon the story you talked about, with the Broncos, putting him on the test. And then three, you've got to have enough arm talent, and he's got enough arm talent. So this could be a great pick for the Broncos. I am really, really interested to see how it's going to go for him and JJ McCarthy.
And your beloved, I'm not doing it, Raiders pick up Brock Bowers, obviously a Georgia tight end. We've seen the stats in regards to the last 10 years and tight ends in the draft. You're going to have Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers there. I love that. That's a great combination in that AFC West. And a guy that fell a little bit in the people's draft going to the Saints at 14, Talise Fuaga. I think he went with Steve Diddy and the Packers. He lands up with my third team, my beloved New Orleans Saints with Charlie Smith. I know you're very high on him as well. Two really interesting, and obviously Fuaga, a guy that's really, really going to benefit Derek Carr. You mentioned about New York and the bright lights. I mean, Brock Bowers is going to Vegas, baby.
Yeah, I tell you what, Brock Bowers will handle Vegas well. I really, really do. I was talking to a couple Raider coaches yesterday, and they didn't tell me they were going to draft Brock Bowers. But what they did tell me was what Antonio Pierce's plan is. And I think he's going to do a great job in Vegas. And I'm talking about Brock Bowers, because you don't have to take, the other tight end off the field, because Brock Bowers can line up at wide out. He can line up at slot. He can be a fullback. He can do all the things. If you picture Michael Mayer, right? Michael Mayer had, I think, a good rookie season. Not a great rookie season, but a very solid rookie season with, a free agent quarterback throwing to him, basically. Now you factor in another tight end in that offense. That causes defenses a lot of problems, because right now the base defense around the National Football League is some version of 4-2-5 with the nickel back on the field. If you do that to Brock Bowers, here's where he's different than Kelsey. Everybody says this comparison is Kelsey. Not in my mind. The comparison is much closer with Brock Bowers. I just think that you look at you look at the blocking stuff that you see in San Francisco, right, with George Kittle. I think he's much closer to Kittle than he is to Kelsey, right? And he's a willing, tough blocker, and his 100% character guy. I think he's a slam dunk for the Raiders, and will add a real dimension to that Raider offense.
Let's go through two more generally, and then we'll talk generally for about 15 or for about 10, Jeff, just on picks, because there was a couple more trades in the first round. We have got a question about the Bills I want to get in a couple of minutes, so remind me before we go. Your guy Latsu, the edge with UCLA, going to Indianapolis. The first year of no Pete Carroll in Seattle. They bring in Byron Murphy. Two really good pickups in the middle of the first round, when you're starting to not see the elite talent go down here, but you're starting to then see the additions pick up there. I love the last two pick in Indianapolis. I think I gotta get you. I gotta get us a water sponsor for this coughing. I'm joking. I just thought it was funny. The Colts needed somebody explosive defensively. Mm-hmm. They get him. Byron Murphy, you're going to find an opportunity there for that defense to really pick up in Seattle. They've got a new coordinator there. I believe everyone knows who he is. So a really good pickup for those guys. Delighted for him. And we got to get him on the show. Can we get him on the show?
Aiden, sure. Sure. Aiden's a wonderful guy, and I'm really happy for him.
Make it happen, Jeffrey. Make it happen next week.
Being the defensive coordinator in Seattle.
What's thoughts on the picks?
I'm going to tell you, I look at these two picks completely differently. Latu was my highest rated defensive player on my draft board, and I think is far and away the best pass rusher in this draft. You look at Indianapolis was probably in the bottom half of the league last year in pressuring the quarterback. This is definitely going to help their defense. Kid that, you don't realize when you watch him play, Mike, and you put the tape on and you look at him and what he can do, and you say, okay, that's a 6'2", 240-pound man. Well, then you look at his measurables, and he's 6'5", 270 pounds. I mean, he's a big edge and can bend, and got great feet. 60-some quarterback pressures his senior year at UCLA and 11 and a half sacks, which if my math isn't very good, right? But, Michael, that's over 70 times he finished at the quarterback in a season. That's incredible numbers. Obviously, I think he's a slam dunk as long as his neck holds up. He had an injury situation when he was at Washington, had to retire from football. Then UCLA cleared him. He went there and finished his career. Now, Byron Murphy, on the other hand, that's a boom or bust pick because he's a 6', 290-pound nose tackle who is exceptionally disruptive in college football, right? He's an up-the-field guy. And again, Aiden Dirty loves those guys that can get up the field and, get into the backfield and make negative yardage plays. He has all that, but he's really short and he's got real short arms. And sometimes when you get up to the next level where all of a sudden everybody's bigger and everybody's more athletic and everybody's tougher and everybody's more technique sound and all of it, little guys struggle. Now, when I talked to Bucky Brooks about him, what Bucky said to me, I said, Buck, I can't believe this guy. Everybody's saying he's going to be the first defensive player picked. I said, no way. I said, name me one time a 6', 290-pound defensive lineman was the first player picked on defense. And he looked, how Bucky is. He's so deadpan. He looked right at me. He goes, Aaron Donald.
So I can just imagine you annoying Bucky Brooks during draft. Like, Jeff, this is the biggest week of the year. Go away.
Maybe he can be Aaron Donald. That's why I say if he is, it's a great pick. If he's just another short nose tackle that gets swallowed up inside, not such a great pick.
All right, we've got 9 or 10 minutes. I want to get this podcast out so people can listen to it the way to work. I'm loving this so far, man. Jason Mullen, I believe he's a Tyrone man, says, go back to bed, Jason. What are you at? I'm joking. What does Coach think of the Bills trading back twice? I want to talk not just about that, Jeff, but also we've got guys like Lad McConkey, wide receiver for Georgia, Cooper DeJean, the quarterback in Iowa, Johnny Newton, Adonai Mitchell, and Kool-Aid. None of those guys went in the first round, but then also the Bills trading back twice. I don't think Bills Mafia are very happy, Jeffrey. Any thoughts generally on that?
Well, I think the Bills have an idea of what they want to do and what they want to get. Now, there's some very, very good players still available, right? When I look at Zach Frazier, center from West Virginia, is a great player. Jackson Power Thomas, another center from Oregon. You mentioned Lad McConkey. Lad McConkey was rated way higher than either Xavier Worthy or Ricky Pearsall, both who went in the first day. Adonai Mitchell, another Texas receiver who was the best of those receivers at Texas, he's still out there. So the Bills need receivers, and they're going to have a chance, I think, to pick up good ones yet in this draft. And, I just think that when there was such a run on tackles, Mike, you talk about, I thought there would be 6 offensive tackles would go in the first round. And here we are, you look at it and they end up 9 of them go in the first round, most ever in the first round of a draft. So again, all that does is push players down, right, into the second day. And so whether it's Cooper DeJean, who will probably be a guy that could go into Buffalo and start right away, and they are losing both Micah Hyde and Poyer in the secondary, that would be a wise pick. And then also you talked about those receivers. Those are good receivers still on the
They'll
board.
not last too long on Friday.
No.
They'll be gone in the first half an hour, 40 minutes. One guy that we talked about, I'm going to start spitballing some players here, Jeff. One guy that we talked about during a coffee for me this morning, Xavier Worthy going to the Chiefs. We've seen the Chiefs do incredible, namely Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, do incredible things with not average talent, but more limited talent than what they had at the beginning of the Patrick Mahomes era in recent years, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They have not been as explosive offensively with their wide receiver core since they lost Tyreek Hill. Sky Moore had a good rookie season, but nothing like Tyreek Hill's level. They bring in Xavier Worthy. You got Travis Kelce are getting a wee bit older. Xavier Worthy's going to be that fresh spring chicken. Do you like the move at 28? The Chiefs traded from 32 to 28 because they were panicking, Jeff. They were panicking, man.
Well, I think they overdrafted, right? Because he's not rated that high. He's probably rated on most boards somewhere in the 30s, and I'm talking the high 30s to the mid 40s in terms of best player available. The thing about him, Worthy, when you talk about Kansas City, what do the Chiefs covet more than anything else in their receiving core? Speed. And there has never been anybody in the history of the NFL Combine that has run as fast as Xavier Worthy does. Now, don't think he's just a stiff-hipped track athlete that can't bend and can't, stick his foot in the ground and come out of a cut or any. He can do that. In addition, he averaged 16.9 yards a punt return at Texas. He gives them, the Chiefs, a real weapon in two phases of the game. As a receiver, right? I don't care if he never catches a ball. The first time you go out to play him, the safeties are going to back up because 4.21 40 speed is incredible. We talked about how incredible, the Reese Sammet speed was at the combine, and he ran 4.4. Do you realize the difference between 4.21 and 4.4? It's about 5 yards, right? I mean, that's how incredibly and Zamet can run, but this kid has an entirely different set of tires.
I can't say too much. I heard nothing but positivity with Zamet yesterday from someone about how he's been able to transform already, and the fact that if he's in there for a year now with him, I know he's not going to. Zamet's not going to start in that situation.
No, I don't. I'm sure that the Chiefs aren't looking for that. But think about again. The Chiefs are doing Chief things, right? They bring in the fastest guy in the draft, which they did with Tyreek Hill, and then which they did again with a receiver out of Georgia, right? A couple years ago that kind of busted on them. They brought in Valdez-Scantling, another fast guy, right? They covet speed. Well, who's the fastest guy? Worthy is. And they moved up to get him because that's how important they think speed is in their offense. And Mike, talking about Zamet doesn't need to play right away. Zamet will be best if he stays on the practice roster or is on and off the roster and finds a role. He'll
builds the skills.
Yeah, give him time. But what he does have, right, is he's been at the highest level of sport, right? He's not going to be intimidated by anybody or the crowds or any of it, right? So he can come in and give him a chance. And, if anybody can create a position or a role for somebody, it's Andy Reid. I mean, you look at him, he's a genius at play design and utilization of personnel. I'm going to say this, and people are going to go, you are out of your mind, but I believe it, right? There are offenses where Travis Kelce wouldn't be on the field. He might maybe be a third down special. You know why? Because they're going to play with an inline tight end and they want to block you, right? Well, that's not his thing, right? But so what does Kansas City do? When they want to block, what happens? They bring in one of those other tight ends that's just
a special
and they block and then throw the ball to Kelce.
I
So
can't wait
that
to tell him that whenever he's in Dublin with Taylor in a couple of months. Jeff Reinbold says that first off, if we get the chance to chat to him, I'm a very lucky man. Not going to happen. Imagine he doesn't come back from Dublin. Imagine like he's spotted on a pint or something, and Andy Reid's like, that's it. That's it.
do you think
June.
did you see him at his college graduation this year?
Yes, I did.
And you know what? Big props to Travis Kelce for going back to school and getting his degree, because it says all the right things. I think that, spiking the beer at his graduation ceremony was a little, was a little.
He's like the working man's Gronk, and I'll leave it at that. Have I told you about the conversation we had with Gronk yet?
No.
Oh my god, I can't say it in this podcast.
Dara
Carger, if you're watching this, props to you. We've got 2 or 3 minutes. I just look, folks, we're not going to get every pick here. So if you're listening to this, don't be annoyed. Like, we've got an hour. Want to get us out for work. Mims went to the Bengals. Jared Verse, FSU guy, went to the Rams. Steelers got in Troy Fanton, who Chop Robinson, Miami. We'll break down a lot of these picks probably on Sunday, going into that there. One guy I want to talk about just as we close, Jeff. The Jags and the Vikings had a bit of a trade, but the Jags get a guy that's going to be an offensive weapon for Trevor Lawrence. LSU's Brian Thomas Jr. at 23. The Jags wanted Brandon Ayuk at one point. They get Brian Thomas. Just your thoughts overall before we close out on that.
Well, I don't know. Ayuk's a proven player, but Ayuk's going to cost you a lot of money, right? And I think for the Jags right now, Thomas is a tremendous, tremendous signing. Mike, he's almost 6'4". He scored 17 touchdowns last year at LSU. 17 times he got the ball in the end zone. Well, the last time I checked, the whole thing is score more points than your opponent, and you win. Now, what he brings to Trevor and that offense is the ability to stretch the field and make big plays down the field. He's going to be a tough matchup for 5'9" corners. He's a big, big man and is great at the catch point. So I think that Thomas selection by the Jaguars was really, really on.
Will we go 10 a.m. your time Sunday? Ollie Hodgkinson's in if you're up for it.
I'm in, baby.
So that's 9 p.m. We'll do it live. Probably our final live show for 4 months. Jeff, just to round up very quickly, no defensive players were taken in the top 10 for the first time in NFL draft history. 14 straight offensive players being chosen. Over 250,000 fans in Detroit. It just gets bigger and better every year, man. And we've got 2 more days to go. Just, if you had to sum it up, did you enjoy it?
It was fantastic. It is exactly what we anticipated it would be. And I'm going to tell you something. We said it a little bit earlier. If you're a big fan and you love your team, now is when the real draft starts. Everybody can pick the top 32 pretty easily. It's from 2nd to 7th that you make your football team. And I think it's going to be incredibly good television, and it'll be a great show on Sunday and when we recap the whole thing.
Just to round off, Jeff, very quickly, because I've had people asking me this, right? And I'm not sure will this make a major Irish social media channel, but it might, so just get your makeup on. I'm joking. Obviously Charlie Smith with the Irish IPP player signed with the Saints. We still have Monaghan's Rory Beggan, Wicklow's Mark Jackson, and also punter Dara Leader as well, still training to try and make it into the NFL. For a lot of people asking and wondering, because I've had 4 or 5 DMs overnight alone asking about them, is it a sort of a situation where teams will get through this weekend, see what they have, and would you expect moves to maybe be made early next week, or does it just it's all sort of TBC, do you think, just from your own experience?
Well, I think, first of all, people got to understand that very, very, very seldom are kickers drafted in the draft. You only have 7 picks, and unless he's a difference maker.
And the IPP players, so these guys don't have a draft selection, but I'm just wondering, and I agree with you, it's very rare generally anyway, but when you see that sort of follow through on like Saturday, Sunday, do you think that's the time where teams will be looking, going, right, who else have we got here?
Yeah, and I think it's important for those guys to just be patient and understand they're gonna select the meat and potatoes of their football team first, and then they'll come back in on the kickers. It's almost like a second season. And I would think, Mike, to be honest with you, that those guys are going to have to go and work out probably 2 or 3 times to find a spot, right? That's usually the way it works. It's so the life of a kicker is so different than the life of an every down player. And again, they're going to get cut, they're going to get worked out, they're going to get cut, they're going to sign, they're going to get cut, they're going to work out, they're going to sign, they're going to get cut. It's just the way it works, right? You talk to any of them and they've all been through it.
Jeff, I want to thank you publicly for coming on here and doing this. It's late for you, my man. I know it's been a long day. I know even from just seeing people watch this live, people appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'll see you and potentially Mr. Ollie Hodgkinson, who spoke to Kool-Aid and didn't tell us. Did you see that the other day? He spoke to Kool-Aid.
I didn't see that.
He had a one-on-one with Kool-Aid and McKinstry the other day.
Maybe he could call Kool-Aid and settling down a bit, because I'll bet Kool-Aid's hot right now because he didn't get
For everyone in their cars driving to work, if you're in Europe, have a great weekend. We're going to be back Sunday night live, 9 a.m. with an overall review. Jeffrey might be there. We'll see, hopefully. And then that podcast will go out Monday morning, 5 a.m. Jeff, for you, my man, thank you so much. Big thanks to the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Check them out, lanktr.ee/NFL Ireland. Jeff, get some sleep. We'll chat to you later.
Aloha.
Gurmia Margaret.